Okay, welcome back. I started recording earlier, but then a bunch of different stuff happened, so we'll see if I use that information or that clip. But so basically, welcome to Into the Miaverse. This is supposed to be a part of an ongoing thing that I'm doing where I am keeping track of what's going on in my life and what I'm doing because I have a lot of ambitions and a lot of stuff that I would like to do that I must document, because if I don't document it, it will just get absorbed into nothingness. Because I feel like there has to be some proof that we're like here and existing in some way. I think I just watched like way too much Dateline and stuff growing up, so it's like there's so many people out there who have just disappeared into thin air. People who there's just simply no trace of, and that's very scary to me. That's very dark to bring up, but like what I'm trying to communicate is like that's why I've got into doing this, because it's just important. And I mean, believe it or not, I'm really working to make it. I'm really working to make something of my creativity and my talents, which is something that I find to be a very sore subject with a lot of people in the population. When I was growing up and I would be in creative spaces, I would be like, I'm gonna get there. Like I'm gonna be successful. I'm gonna be exactly where I would like to be. And in those moments and times, people would very quickly like take that as me being very arrogant or just having this view of myself like I just thought I was the shiznits. And I'm like, I'm thinking back to it, I'm like, it was never a point of me being like, oh yeah, like I'm just so great. It was more so me being like, hey, my success is like my survival is very dependent on my success. There is no failure for me. There is no option for me to not get there. My life depends on this. Everything depends on this. I've got to make it. And I believe maybe it might have been because I was speaking to people who possibly came from a place of privilege or just like didn't understand the experience of like really being poor. Maybe because I mean, like, poor people and people of color specifically who like didn't have a lot of opportunities know what it's like to see, oh my gosh, like my life is really in my hands right now. Like I gotta really work my ass off to get to where I need to get to, because if I don't, I ain't gonna make it. Not only am I not gonna make it, my family's not gonna make it. Like I gotta make sure we eat, like that type of vibe. So it's like I don't, maybe it was just because of the type of rooms that I was in, people just weren't understanding the vibe that I was on. But and then for a while, I took it personal. I was like, well, damn, like, did I say something wrong? And then it was weird because me, I'm not really clicking the social cues. Like, I'm not really understanding the fullness of what's going on. So people are like making eye contact with each other, like, oh, wow, like, really? And like, being an adult and being somebody who actually started looking into human behavior, because I'm trying to understand what the hell is happening, those moments were definitely moments where people were projecting so hard to the point to where like we're not even having the same conversation. Like they're experiencing something completely different than me. And that frustrates me. That really frustrates me because it's like here I am trying to communicate with you on a vulnerable level from a vulnerable place, and you're giving me bullshit. Like you're just giving me nothing. That was really frustrating. That was really frustrating. It's been frustrating, and it still frustrates me to this day because there are some times where I'm talking to people and they're not in the conversation. They're somewhere else dealing with their own feelings. It's just a lot, which is like a whole different topic. Honestly, that's something that we would definitely probably have to talk about, because the average person who's like very quick to judge people or very quick to take things personal, very quick to try and read between the lines, typically lacks the emotional intelligence to understand that there's a world that exists outside of themselves. I mean, that's not me being like, oh, you guys are stupid. That's me saying those individuals genuinely are their brains are focused on survival. And when you're focused on survival, there's a lot of different things happening around you that your mind is kind of completely separate from. And I've just noticed that people who don't necessarily have the emotional intelligence to engage on a level that's not like inherently selfish or inherently self-centered, those kinds of people are very difficult to deal with. And for some reason, they can smell me a mile away. I mean, as soon as we make eye contact, there's an immediate like discomfort and hostility that they kind of approach me with. It's very like, oh, like you think you're better than me. And it's like, I need you to understand life is not a popularity contest. I know that there's this thing where people are like, oh, yeah, it is a popularity contest. You got to make sure people like you. That's different. That's different. It's not necessarily, oh, if we're going to say that life is a popularity contest, we should say that life is a kindness contest. You need to be the type of individual that people know that they can trust more than somebody that they think is just amazing. Because at the end of the day, how many stories have we seen where the mean girl or the popular kid gets freaking murdered by the groups of people that were quote unquote worshiping them? Just not a great place to be. It's not, it's just weird, especially with like, there's girls at times, and it frustrates me so much because it's like, you can tell from a very young age, women are taught like you need to be in competition with other girls, and it creates this like really disgusting zone of just like carnage where there's so many girls and young women who have just lost their lives and lost opportunities and been seriously harmed because of this concept of like, oh, nobody, it can only be one of us. Like, it just has to be one of us. That's so weird to me. That's weird to me. That's always been weird to me because it's like, we are so different. We're so unique. How the hell can there only be one individual who has to fit this specific position? Everybody else has to be underneath them. It's like, or we could all just stay in our own individual places and be that one in our own area because we're so unique. The fact that you're so unique makes you an individual. That makes you that one individual, right? Then I realized that people weren't unique. That people had sacrificed so much of their authenticity to be like replicas of something else. That's where that violence came from. Freaks me out. Freaks me out. And then I was thinking, I just had this thought because I had recently kind of done my toenails. I painted them. And I was sitting back and I was like, my feet like don't look jacked up as long as I've been dancing. You know, they don't look horrible. And there's a lot of dancers that I met that kind of like, they got some jacked up feet. And I thought about just the concept of how many times I had seen dancers, particularly ballet dancers, you know, in the middle of class or just like at a performance where there's like blood coming out of their shoes. Like they're jacked up. And they keep going, they keep going, they keep dancing. And then you kind of see the concept of it, like you see it discussed outside of those zones, and it's like, oh, you know, they're so dedicated. But it's like, that's not an example of dedication. That's an example of self abandonment. Because at the end of the day, there is no situation beyond life or death that is that important for you to abandon yourself and your health to that extent. It made me think about like, why is that so common? Why is that concept so common? And then I thought about life. That ballet is very much like what it's like to be a woman, what it's like to be female in the world. It's because at the end of the day, your suffering in society is deemed more valuable than you just existing or you contributing in a creative way. Like it's like, oh, if you can suffer, if you can extend your period of your, you know, pain threshold, if you can push till you can't push no more, until you're just, you know, as long as you can stay useful, that's where it's at. There's this society very much focuses on people and their usefulness. And it frustrates me. It frustrates me because it's like, from a very young age, we are literally primed to live in a society that treats and views us as expendable. We are primed to experience that. I mean, if you look at war, if you look at the military, if you look at the jobs that are around here, you know, I try to get a good one. It's not necessarily like carpentry is bad. Let's say, so there's just a lot of jobs that put extensive like stress on the body. And there's so many people that I see that are suffering, very obviously suffering. And it's like, oh, it's fine. It's completely fine because like that's a sign of a good worker. That's a sign of a good human being. I just think about all this stuff a lot. I think about many things because I'm a thinker. I do this often. And most times I'm kind of alone, but not really alone, so I have the time to register that. That's another thing that I noticed is so different. Something that I find to be very exhausting is like monitoring the way that I'm speaking and the words that I'm saying constantly when I'm dealing with certain people. That gets so tiring. And it's not necessarily like, oh, I have to make sure that I don't say the wrong thing or lie. It's more so like I have to be aware that depending on the type of topic that I'm bringing up, I may be dealing with people who are, or I am dealing with people who aren't necessarily comfortable speaking about these topics. One thing that I noticed, I know you guys have probably heard this like a lot, and I've been trying to find a better statement, but it's like the only statement that I can really be like is like, oh, I'm a truth teller. Okay. Now we've heard a lot of weird ass people talking about some, we're truth tellers, and they're really just mean and disrespectful. But what I mean by that is when I see something going on, I'm gonna be like, y'all see that going on? Like I'm gonna bring that to the forefront. I'm gonna ask questions. I'm gonna ask why. And that makes people upset. Like they do not like that experience. They do not like when you sit there and point out some shit that they know is happening, because it immediately puts them in a position to where they have to acknowledge the situation, and they have to acknowledge that they are complacent, or they're an accessory to the crimes that are being committed, the social crimes or the physical crimes. They do not like that. They don't like that. Your own family will get aggravated with you, so angry at you, will demonize the hell out of you because you are looking at what's wrong with the situation, and they don't want to hear that shit. I mean, it used to happen when I was a child, and like I learned to kind of shut up a little bit, but then I reached a place in my life where I got older, and I realized the toll of just not talking about stuff and just walking around with these lies was so tiring. Like it was so exhausting, to the point where it's just like I reached a point where I'm like, you know what? I mean, it is what it is. I mean, you're not going to sit here and get a lie from me. I'd rather just shut up and be silent and you never hear nothing from me than for me to sit here and play a game of, well, let's not talk about the elephant in the room. Like, I don't like that. I'm going to address the elephant. I'm going to talk to the elephant. Are you good? Like, you need some water? Why are you here? Like, that's the type of concept of like how I operate in conversation. And people don't like that. They do not like that. That is very interesting to me. Like, I've had family members get pissed off at me. So what you trying to say? I said it. Like, there's not really a. I said to you what I meant to say. We should even be having this discussion. Like, you know what I'm saying. I just don't understand why you are uncomfortable with that. And it seems like a lot of people are just like, if they acknowledge they're wrong, if they acknowledge how they harmed someone, their entire worldview will shatter. And the type of individual I am, I'd rather my worldview shatter than for me to be walking around here believing a lie and doing things that are harming people because I think something that's not true. So I don't understand that. I don't understand that. I would never understand that. So basically, yeah, I just got into the zone of like talking about my ideas of the things. This is the stuff that's been on my mind. This is the stuff that's been on my mind, and I guess that's probably what we're gonna end up doing. Because every once in a while, I gotta sit down and I gotta get this out of my head. And the average individual doesn't necessarily want to hear it, which frustrates me. Because it's like, why don't y'all want to have conversations like these? Why don't y'all want to talk? Y'all don't want to talk about what's happening. Y'all don't want to sit down and share notes and be like, hey, man, I saw this and I saw that. Did you perceive this happening? I did perceive that happening. To me, having that moment of speaking to somebody about a situation that we're both experiencing is so eye-opening, and it's so soothing to me because I'm able to understand that my reality is real, that what I'm experiencing is happening, not just to me, but to other people. And that's on being gaslit my entire childhood. But I'm just saying, like, I just don't understand the concept of not wanting to connect with people in that way. And I have reached a position and a capacity where it's like I cannot continuously engage with people who are in la la land. Like, they're just not connected with what's happening. Um, it's so strange. I don't know if I ever really believed this. I guess I just didn't think about it. But I noticed that there's like this concept of like, oh, like you can definitely hang around people that you disagree with. And while, yeah, you can hang around an individual that like doesn't like the same flavor of ice cream as you, or has like a different way of running their household to where they want the silverware on the left side of the kitchen, things like that. That's based off of preference. That's based off of individuality. But when it comes to like very, very important things like how people should be treated and like how children are raised, and beliefs about, identity and things like that. Those are big things. Those are big things that are not meant to be, two people who are on two opposite ends of those types of topics should not be engaging in the same space. And that's why it's so weird to me to have experiences where, I could just be hearing somebody close to me talk, and I hear them say some shit that I'm just like, you believe that? You personally believe that? And it's been kind of weird for me, because I guess when the average child is raised to be a replica of their parents. And in being raised to be a replica of your parents, you adopt everything. You adopt their ideas, you adopt their way of talking, their speech patterns, like their just the way that they view things, their morals. You adopt those things. Unless they're in direct conflict with you, and then you are then experiencing a deep-seated confliction where you're like, okay, well, I don't like these things, but these are my parents and these are the things that they're doing. And so now you're at war with yourself, because you as a child know that you don't vibe with that, but it's like not like you can escape it. Like you can't get away from it. So that's an experience. But this just goes to say that, like, I didn't know, of course I didn't know, I was little, how, excuse me, how much of my parents that I adopted, how much of them that I absorbed, not necessarily from a place of just learning how to live in the world, but just like not being a person, not being an individual. Um, I just didn't really completely do that. I was loud. Like I said what I wanted to say. I knew right from wrong. But there's a moment in engaging with my parents that I remember as a child where it was just kind of like, your word is law, because that's what you're taught. Your word is law. Your word is so law that it doesn't matter if it doesn't make sense to me. All that matters is the fact that, I mean, I've been taught that you know more than me, so you must know something that I don't know. And that type of concept, I've learned, is extremely dangerous, because you can create a space, well, it is creating a space where a child will deny reality as it is, because they're being taught that their parents are reality. Their parents' views are reality. What their parents are telling them, that's what it is. You can be looking at a pail, and that pail is obviously green. And their parent is like, if that parent is telling them that it's blue, that child now has to sit with themselves and either understand or choose to say, okay, well, they're telling me something that's incorrect because I know that's green. Or they're going to do the opposite thing, which is what a lot of children do, to where they're like, okay, well, maybe I'm incorrect. I'm looking to you to show me these different things of the world. And so, to circle back to what I was saying, in light of that concept, there is a space that I have reached in adulthood and had been reaching for quite some time. But I feel like I had a little bit of arrested development in getting there, because there was like just not enough space for me to do that. I started to register more and more how much of what I was being told on a daily basis was preference, was just straight preference. This may have something to do with me being neurodivergent, but I was taking a lot of what I was being told literally. And I do know that that comes from the fact that it was communicated literally. It wasn't just me having an issue to where I always take things literally. It was being insinuated that all this stuff was exactly the way that I was being told it was. So it's like I was never taught the difference between my parents' preferences and what was right and wrong. And so it's like, if they don't like that, then it must be wrong. That was the concept of how I had believed about things. And then when I got older and I started registering, when I started like wanting to dress a certain way, and I wanted to do this and I wanted to do that, they were very much like, oh, well, like I don't really vibe with that, or this usually in my time this meant that. And while I can sit here as an adult and understand how these things present to them, I also have to be able to understand in my mind where those beliefs may be biased, where they may be coming from a place of them having a traumatic experience, them having a negative experience, because at the end of the day, people form their views of things based off of their experience, which isn't a bad thing. But if you're not tempering that with reality and you're not tempering that with understanding that you could be biased, then you're just kind of walking around with a lot of beliefs of what things are based off of just your experience. And that's not good. So, yeah, basically it's been a bit of a weird thing to have to listen to what I'm being told in a way to where I'm not just taking it like, oh yeah, this is right and wrong. Like I don't have to think about it. Now I have to make sure. I have to manually make sure that I think about every single thing that's being said to me. Because I already did that out in the world. I just didn't know that I didn't do that with my parents. And that is a concept that is very strange. It's a very odd experience because once you start doing it and you start paying attention to what they're saying to you from a place of like, okay, well, why are they saying that? So much becomes apparent and it makes you uncomfortable because I don't necessarily believe that there was like a moment where I thought that my parents were superheroes. I do remember thinking, if I'm having a rough time, these are the people that I go to protect me. But there's just like there's a space there that wasn't there before to where it's like when you start talking to your parents and they actually start opening up to you like as an adult, you start hearing the way that they view things and the experiences that they've had, you really get a reality check. You really get hit with the understanding that these are people. And I hate to make it sound like so simplistic, but it's like as a child you are not taught this stuff. Now if somebody had sat down and discussed this with me, I would have been like, that's really interesting. And I would have grown to understand it very quickly and I would have really chewed on that information. But this is this concept that no one told me. I had to find this understanding through paying attention. And that also is the scary part because it's like you will really not know shit if your parents don't tell you. You will not know stuff if nobody tells you. And that's why when I see people doing weird things, I don't immediately assume that person's wacko. They're crazy. I look and I'm like, well, who never taught them right? Who never communicated these things to them? Because being in a place of ignorance is being in a place of vulnerability. It's being in a place where you can get hurt, where bad things can happen to you because of what you don't know. Ignorance is not bliss. You are primed to be a victim. So I just think about that. And I've also been thinking about parenthood, about how parents, the parent child relationship specifically, which is a very interesting concept. It's something that I've been attempting to really, really sort through as an individual because I had no idea how inside out a lot of what I had understood about what it meant and what was going on actually was until I got older and started reading therapy books and going to therapy and doing all these different things, and I started being like, oh, so that's why my heart's beating super fast in my chest when I'm laying still in bed. Like that's why those different things are happening to me. That's why I have anxiety. That's why that's happening. That's why I want to go to sleep all the time or I don't have motivation. It's a whole big thing of like really looking to see what's happening. And that was a concept that I did not have access to when I was younger. Nobody took the time to make sure that I had access to that, which is something else to deal with. It's something else to think about where I'm sure some of you guys may experiences where you just kind of sit back and you wonder like, well, why didn't y'all say anything about that? Why wasn't that brought up? Like, why didn't we discuss any of those things? And I just think it's so crazy how deeply affected children are by their parents and how wildly just like there's so much that parents do that you can tell they didn't think about. And it's just so strange because it's just like I don't understand being in a place of having a small human and not like ingesting as much information as I possibly can about how to like take care of it properly. I don't understand being in a place of just kind of like, well, like one of them's here and just kind of like just raw dogging it. I don't get that. I don't understand that. And at first I was thinking like, at first I was like, is that just something that I personally do? Am I just like a very, intense individual and I just want to know what's happening? I guess it's part of me being like very naturally curious, but like at the same time, before I get into anything, before I make a commitment, I need to know what's going on. And I just think about how people are how people just deal with children. And then it's probably like a generational gap, because I have noticed for like Gen Z, which is my generation, there's a lot of stuff that we deal with that is more, it's more like our concept of doing a lot of different things is a little bit more focused on our we think about the consequences a lot more than I noticed our parents did. I really do believe that's a huge generational gap. And I'm not saying that like Gen Z is so enlightened and so much smarter, but I'm saying that there are some things that Gen Z thinks about in deep detail that I noticed that like millennials didn't think about, and Gen X didn't think about, and boomers for damn sure didn't think about. So it's like I just kind of noticed, and I believe that's probably just coming from a place of us looking at everybody else and being like, y'all really screwed everything up. Like, and now we got to deal with like a bunch of bull crap. And that's not to say that like Gen Z is perfect and magical. I mean, people were eating Tide Pods. I remember that. And like spoonfuls of cinnamon. That was crazy. But I'm just saying, like, I just noticed that with my generation, there's a lot of stuff that we become like a hell of a lot more conscious about, specifically like with children. And there's a lot of people that I know that just aren't going to have them. They just like, they don't want children, or they're like, this is not the time for it. I myself, this is not the time for it. This is a very, very scary time in the world. I just kind of think about the concept of like what it means to have a child. It's so important for me to be in the right headspace to even think of that happening. There's like, for myself, I've made a list of things that I have to have before a child is even spoken of in my life. And that is me being intense about wanting to actually have a good life, not just for myself, but for my offspring. That's so important to me. And I ain't gonna lie, men are weird. They're weird. I don't know what is going on with them. Like I don't really. I mean, I've been looking at them. I've been studying. I've been paying attention. I'm like, oh, y'all are tripping. Like there's a lot of deep seated beliefs that y'all need to really let go of because you're hurting yourselves. But for the most part, like I just don't have the time for them. I don't have the time to like baby somebody into emotional intelligence. There's books on it you should read. Which apparently getting a library card is childish. Did you guys hear about that? Y'all heard about that? But I'll forever have a library card. I don't know where they went from that. Where he got that from. That's so weird. Speaking of which, I need to get a library card. I need a library card so I can get a bunch of like music books and film books and all types of stuff. Yeah. So this is a check-in. I just want to check in. I just want to talk because I've had so much on my mind, and I'm trying to like keep my mouth shut in terms of like parental situations, because I just feel like that's my business, and there's not really much that's like super crazy. Like, yeah, it's not like super bad, but I just like I have a lot of questions about like my own upbringing and upbringing of others around me and how that affected me, and I'm still sorting through so much of it, so it's like a tender place. So that's why I'm like not getting into it too deep. But there will be times that I get into it pretty deep because I feel like it just really should be discussed, and I got questions because I'm trying to figure out what the hell is going on. And a lot of us have the same experiences. So I'm like, okay, well, like, what was wrong with your parents? So I don't know. I've had several different experiences with different parental figures in my life. All of them were weird to some extent. I've had some sort of experience where I was like, what was that for? And that's very common. I've rarely met a group of people who experienced a normal type of relationship that wasn't affected by trauma on some extent. And that's the world that we live in. I'll say live on. Is it live on or live in? Because we're on the earth, right? We're not like in it. I always get that mixed up. Not because like I don't know English, but more so because people say two different things, and it frustrates me because I feel like on is the right word, but people always say in. So yes, I have been trying to listen to music more. I've been meditating more, and burning incense. Well, I haven't burned incense yet, but like burning sage, keeping the airways clear. The vibe in here is kind of nice. My room is like peaceful. It needs to be clean though. It needs to be, reorganized. Yeah, I just right now I'm attempting to find like that moment of I've been attempting to find a rhythm, and that is not happening, which means that I'm just going to have to like bulldoze everything and just start doing things. And And that I don't like to do that. I don't usually like to do that. I like to do things when everything is nice and organized and it's ready for me to move forward. And it seems like that desire to wait for things to be correct or to try and get everything in order to perfection before I begin is really hurting my progress. It's really in my way because I am fighting for something that I don't need to get started. This channel is not called Into the Miaverse for no reason. Unfortunately, as much as I like for things to be as organized as possible, I am a bit chaotic. The vibe that I have is kind of like it fills up the space, and I can't necessarily try and keep everything, tight and cookie cutter because that is not who I am. That's never been who I am. Yes, I can be meticulous, I can be organized, I can be disciplined, but I've been meticulous, organized, and disciplined since I was very young, and it was for survival. And right now, my inner child needs to be able to make a mess. It needs to be able to exist in a space that is not, you know, being characterized by this overarching need for everything to be organized. I need the space to make a mess. I need the space to allow my brain to be emptied out in front of me. I have to do that. I know that I have to do that. I just haven't been doing that. So I'm going to start practicing, radical chaos, I guess is what it is, where I'm allowing myself to kind of be for a moment and ignore the comments of, oh gosh, this is a mess. You need to clean this up. You need to get this organized. I think it comes from a place of me constantly being chastised about organization growing up and keeping everything as organized and clean as possible and never being able to make it. I kid you not, like there was never a moment where everything that I did was completely organized and there was never anything for my parents to say. Like it's I just remember constantly cleaning up and doing all these different things and trying to get things as organized as possible and being so proud of myself because I'm like, okay, well, I got this done, I got that done, and it looks great to me. And then like having my mom or my dad come in and look at it and being like, it's all right, but this could have been done better or that could have been fixed. And it's like, I understand that maybe that wasn't from a place of trying to kind of like get me down or anything like that, maybe. But what it ended up doing is getting me into this headspace to where it's like my best wasn't good enough. Especially like as a child, being in a place of like trying to do things properly and being told like, oh, that's just like not enough. Like it's just not good enough. And then bringing it up and being like, well, okay, well, I mean, you're basically telling me that what I'm doing isn't good enough. Can I get like some information on how to do better? And then having a full-blown conversation of it just being like, you're saying that I said this and that's not what I meant. And it's like, okay, I understand that you realize that you telling me that what I did wasn't good enough is uncomfortable for you, but I'm gonna need you to skip over that and actually explain to me how to get this right. My camera died. But um that's the headspace that I've been in. I've been thinking about a lot of different things. Unfortunately, not all of them are good. um, because this is I'm in a time of transformation. I'm in a time of transformation. I'm changing. And it's for the better. But it's considerably sad in a way because it's like, I'm not necessarily physically changing. My mind is changing, my view is changing, my understanding is changing, and that feels more intense than any sort of physical change that I could have had because it's like the concept and the way that you view the world is so important to how you experience the world. And in order for me to enjoy myself and enjoy my life and find meaning in my life, there's so much that I have to let go of. And I was not expecting that. I don't think anybody really does. But yeah, so that's the experience. But I'm saying that I would like to thank you for being on this journey with me, for connecting with me, and for wanting to engage. And these talks are where I'm at right now. It's the vibe that I'm on right now, and I hope that that is okay. I mean, if it's not, you don't have to watch. But I'm just saying, like, this is what I'm creating right now. This is what I have to start off creating. I'm not sure what my content is going to be like 2, 3, 6 months from now, a year from now. I don't know. I really don't know what anything is going to look like. I just know that it needs to be different from right now. It needs to be better. And that's what I'm aiming for. I'm aiming for better. That's all. That's all for now.